The question is that the report of the Finance and Expenditure Committee on the annual financial statements of the Government for the year ended 30th of June 2011 and the Treasury be noted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now move to the order. We now move to the financial review of the Office of the Controller and Auditor General. Will members please turn to the Finance and Expenditure Committee's report. The question is that the report of the Finance and Expenditure Committee on the 2010-11 financial review of the Office of the Controller and Auditor General be noted.
Speaker.
To you, Roa Flavel.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Kia ora tātou katoa. I take a few minutes just to focus on the financial review of the Controller and Auditor General and note that the Finance and Expenditure Committee of the report of the Controller and Auditor General was pretty succinct. In fact, it only had 2 lines. But I did want to mention some work that did occur during the period of the review because it's key to, I suppose, making sure that we hold the government to account. So the massive 100-page report into the central government results of the 2010-11 audits ask some key questions about the public service. For example, is one size fits all the appropriate approach to take for the future? Should there be a more collective approach to reporting? Is a simpler, more flexible approach desirable? So these are great questions, and I want to just take a couple of examples to sort out why. In the health sector audits, the Auditor General tells us that despite there being specific legislation in place to reduce the disparities for Māori, the lack of information on the annual reports and the absence of targets to reduce disparities makes it pretty hard to gauge DHB's progress. Some DHBs had great intentions to improve the health outcomes for Māori, but for 4 DHBs there wasn't even a mention of health disparities for Māori in the plans at all. For 14 DHBs there was a mention of initiatives to address some disparities, but the descriptions were pretty general rather than specific in detail. Can I suggest, sir, that a collective approach might result in measures and targets for Māori with trend data reported in the annual reports would be a pretty good approach. If I move to the education sector, I was interested in the 2011 audit of Māori immersion schools. One of the aspects of interest was around the notion of conflict of interest. Given, sir, the close association by whakapapa and by whānau associations in kura, there's every likelihood that kura will be employing staff who are actually whanaunga relations to the trustees who obviously run the schools. The Auditor General acknowledges that this is a reality, and in fact, out of the 64 kura or schools that had boards, 46, that is 72%, were in this position. So the report had some really simple advice around how one might manage the perception of conflict of interest. In one school, in one kura, for example, the principal's husband tendered for the contract to paint the school office. When it came to the discussions around the contract, the principal abstained herself. In another kura, the brother of a trustee tendered for a contract. The board minutes state that the board member concerned was not consulted, and because there was there would be a conflict of interest. This is the sort of information that we would expect as a part of the key auditor's function, really specific, useful, measurable actions that makes the words mean something. Finally, sir, the reason I think that the work of the Controller and Auditor General is so important is basically around the whole notion of accountability. It's pretty simple. We need to know that any service or agency being funded by the taxpayer has and is making a real difference to the communities. It's got to be more about just having documents of plans. We want to know that the plans have made life a lot better and that the results of those plans are being communicated in a meaningful way. And that serves at the heart, in a sense, the genesis of whānau ora. We want the government to be more transparent and accountable to Parliament and to the public. The Auditor General talks about the cost of producing reports for just the sake of having some reports. We want to be able to trust that public funds are being spent to improve the situation for people. So the classic example is in local government. In 2010-11, local authorities receiving $14.5 billion to finance the services they deliver to the community seems way over the top. The Local Government Act 2002 requires that councils consider and promote current and future wellbeing of communities. It has also introduced new responsibilities and opportunities for engagement and cooperation between councils and Māori. And yet, sir, what we know is that the performance against these criteria is at best variable, and the Māori Party is determined that local authorities must comply with these requirements by law. And so again, that is why the appropriations report is pretty vital as we move forward. Kia ora.
Members, the question is that the report of the Finance and Expenditure Committee on the 2010-11 financial review of the Office of the Controller and Auditor General be noted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I understand the next financial review members wish to debate is the financial review of the Office of the Ombudsman. Will members please turn
Mr.
to
Speaker, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'm still speaking.
You said...
No, I haven't got to giving the call yet. I still have some preamble. I still have some preamble, and then I'll give the member a call. Will members please turn to the Administration Committee's report? The question is that the report of the Government Administration Committee on the 2010-11 financial review of the Office of the Ombudsman be noted.
Chair.
Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is one of the most disturbing parts of this financial review.